Wow. It's been, I'd say, over a week since
No, it has. Oh my gosh,
it
you're
has, right? It's
right.
been over a week since Collaboration in Aging, the Unconference, really shook up the landscape here. And who better than to talk about the dynamic impact we've had both with keynotes, presentations, integrations, workshops, the village, than one of the co-founders and the executive director, Cambria Jacobs. So let's get Cambria on here, who's going to talk a little bit more about that difference maker that we had, that change maker, where we maybe rattled a few cages in a not so good way, but in a way that showed we truly are making an impact on how we're going to do things moving forward. So, Cambria, welcome.
Thank you both so much. And thank you to Mavericks of Senior Living for having me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
super excited to talk to you, Cambria. And, we were all there, but you kind of had this different purview. And I'm really excited for you to share with our audience. But we should probably first start with what is collaboration in aging? What is this thing we're talking about?
Absolutely. Thank you. So collaboration in aging 2023, this was our second year. And really it was the collaboration of Kala, the Colorado Assisted Living Association, COPRA, the Colorado Placement and Referral Agency, as well as Mavericks of Senior Living. And together, we really looked at our different businesses and realized that we all had the mission of doing better, of serving, but we also realized that we were in our own silos in a lot of different ways. And together, we looked at how can we start to break down those silos and bridge those gaps, and thus collaboration in aging was born. And so last year was our maiden voyage. It was amazing because it was also right in the middle / sort of end, the second end of COVID.
The second end, yes.
The pit stop. And we were so unbelievably amazed that the day that our conference in 2022 actually happened was also the day that Denver lifted the mask mandate. So as you can imagine, everyone that has been in this industry, not only finally coming together, but then coming together without masks to talk about really all of these disruptive topics, and also just to address where we had all been during COVID and how can we move through this. And after that conference, the audience came to each and every one of these founding collaborators and asked, please do this again. This is what's needed, the conversations, the topics. Can you please do this in 2023? And so this group got back together, and we do not have funding. So we raise, and we are therefore allowed to show up, thanks to our sponsors and to attendees. That is the only income in which this conference is funded. And so together we realized, wow, we got so much interest. We had outgrown our traditional hotel spot and had to go into the convention center, which really added a validity and also different kinds of challenges. And thus, Collaboration in Aging 2023, the Unconference, happened last week, September 27th and 28th at the Colorado Convention Center.
yeah, and I think you said a few things there is the growth of it. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, we've had, last year, it was post-COVID, people are trying to get back, but this year we had a pretty strong attendance as well as, kind of both local and even a little bit of international. You want to talk a little bit about what we saw from a growth component here?
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't know what to expect in 22, with all of the challenges and being new. And we still, had, around 125, 150 folks. We kept it intimate intentionally. And this year we surpassed 300. So we more than doubled in our size. We also had 30% of our attendees from out of state, which was a real push for us. Is that, yes, we hosted the conference in Colorado, but this absolutely is a national event. And even drawing and pushing the borders into international space, where we did have a handful of folks that flew in out of country as well, bringing really a much much bigger perspective, and also highlighting this is not a Colorado event. These are not Colorado specific issues. This is national and global topics and scale and change and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you know what I thought was really cool though. We finally we did a pretty decent job last year with the village being kind of a village, right? What was really cool that we were able to do this year was truly have the winding, weaving interconnections, so that our vendors, our sponsors, it didn't feel like a row of just vendors or sponsors, right?
Right, row
And
after
watching
row.
the dynamics and the interaction of people demoing and feeling and touching and just engaging in a more personalized way than I've seen before was pretty cool when you looked at our village setup.
And can you talk about what the village is? Because not everyone knows that's not a typical term, right?
No, for sure. So the Unconference, as was really pushed, I mean, that's the beauty of the collaboration, right? Because, we had, we had Kathy, we had Francis, we have Pam and Cameron and Nicole and Peter really representing these different groups. And we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences where we could challenge one another. And something that the team was really passionate about is if we're going to own the term Unconference, we need to challenge ourselves about thinking differently, not doing, if it's what every other conference does, let's do it the opposite. And so one of us would go down a traditional path because it was the path of least resistance and the way we were getting pushed by the convention center and other people who expected us to show up a different way. Mm-hmm. And then we would flip that on its head. So one of this is, as Francis mentioned, last year we started with this concept of the village. And yes, we all are familiar with the term, it takes a village. It takes a village to navigate this complex world of aging. And what is this human experience in aging? And this team together rooted itself on, let's really have the village show what that human experience is. And it is not a linear path. It is not lined with perfectly rolled out carpets and drapery and pipes to show you which way to walk. It is confusing. It is wonderful. It is hard. We see pitfalls and hills and valleys and all of that stuff. So why not make the area, which is traditionally called the exhibit hall, why don't we make it feel more reflective of that human experience in aging? And thus the village was born. And so we challenged our village sponsors to show up not like their traditional pop-up display with brochures and their PowerPoints to walk them through what they do. We said, don't tell us what you do. Challenge yourself and your team to really show us. Let us have this immersive experience and feel your impact, your why. Show up in the village so we can experience your why on what was traditionally known as the trade show floor and what we have coined as our village. And our sponsors absolutely took it to heart. Some of the experiences were just second to none.
Yeah.
And can I say, part of the reason that we did that was intentionally to get people out of their comfort zone. And we go back to the quote from Albert Einstein that is, we can't solve today's problems with the same thinking we used to create them. So to come in and disrupt the way you think from the first foot in the door is really a powerful thing. And then the second aspect of it is that we called them spaces. They weren't a booth. It was a space, and you could do with that space whatever you wanted. And it was 360 degrees. So you had that whole space, whether it was a 6x6 or a 10x10, whatever it was. And you didn't have to have your back to somebody. You didn't have this pipe and drape, as you mentioned, Cambria, right behind you, separating this and that. And really to be able to be that creative got people thinking differently about how we can work together, because that's the whole goal, is to break down these silos and work together better and identify what those issues are. So,
and I think the neat thing also about that, Kathy, was that when people walked in, they also felt they let their guard down, because they weren't, when you walk in, I'm walking into a trade show, I'm going to be very professional and represent my brand and who I am. And when they walked in, a great example is we built the village around the Care campground. How can you be uptight and take yourself that seriously if you're in a campground?
Right.
And
the care with the K. Care with the K. Yep.
With Charles Turner and Laura Cambria and all of the amazing care staff they were the nucleus of our village. And so whatever village you were traveling through, you were connected together and welcomed. Everything from an amazing Barbie house with the Barbie Jeep and the Golden Girls Barbies and Wheelchair Ken, to be able to show how can you travel through these different partners and yet keep the road and the consistency together. So how can you be uptight with Barbie houses and campfires and rickshaws and vans with disco balls, and yet all of it is people actually got into not just grabbing free swag, but actually walking away understanding, I had no idea that's what you did. Now that I experienced it, how can I learn more? How can we have follow-up meetings after this? How can I actually make a purchase in the village? Let's make this happen. So it was really amazing too to have a concept like that, and then have your partners and sponsors bring it to life in a bigger and better way than you ever could have imagined.
And that's the one thing that I think that's standing out with me, is the incredible feedback we're getting from both the attendees as well as the sponsors. I mean, the sessions and the keynote, which I think we're going to dive into here in a minute, just the amount of feedback that was, remarkable of, wow, this was actually, I didn't know what to expect, but man, I am so glad I came, and I'm truly walking away with better connections. We asked all of our sponsors, making sure they were getting the connections they want. And every one of them pretty much said, yeah, I got some really good connections that are going to be able to, take next steps. And I think what was important here is you can attend a conference where people, yeah, sure, you get 500 people to walk by your booth, or 1,000, right? But of those, what really turns into a viable connection that's going to help move your information, your product, your knowledge forward? Here with our 300 plus, they were in. They wanted to know more. They wanted to find the resource. So those connections that our sponsors made were powerful because they knew we needed change. So these are the ones that are going to help, we're helping promote these new thought processes, these new ideas. And it's pretty cool when you hear, your sponsors say, yeah, this was definitely worth every, my time, my energy, my dollars.
Yeah. I think another thing that we did on the unconference front was, how can we actually, since this is really one community, one audience, we treated our sponsors, our speakers, and our attendees as one united group.
Yep.
It's just that some of our sponsors chose to show up as sponsors, and other people that equally could have been sponsors showed up as attendees. And the way that we made sure that we kept that unified front going is that we close the village when the sessions are actually in session. And so together we moved from the village, and then we all moved into those same topics. So we were continuing that education, and our sponsors weren't missing out on the topics that they not only cared a lot about, but also then better understood if their prospects or their customers were attending sessions, they were equally on the same page as them, and they could continue that conversation when they got back to the village. And that was a remarkable bit of feedback, because we all know that when you go to a traditional trade show, normally, yes, you can go into the exhibit hall at no charge, but yet the sessions are highly curated. They involve also normally meals and food and beverage and all of those things. And we did not segment or segregate our attendees from our speakers to our sponsors. We were one group from start to finish, and allowed that to happen in a much richer fashion, in a much more intimate setting.
Well, how about this? I want to dive into our keynote, Stephanie Staples, because she stayed for the whole conference. That was pretty cool. I mean, she was going to sessions. I mean, and her feedback was pretty powerful, because again, she opened up our conference in a way that, I mean, I have heard nothing but wow. So let's kind of dive into Stephanie and that opening keynote that I think set the tone for the entire conference.
again, back to that unconference and disruption. And
Right.
I don't know what feels more disruptive than getting a collective group of over 300 people moving around the keynote main stage and coming together literally in song as one close, tight-knit group, all within the first 45 minutes of the show opening. So Stephanie Staples is an inspirational speaker. She came to us from Toronto, Canada. She had built her career as being a nurse and a mother and a wife, and doing it all because she could, and burning out because she did. And so she really used that aha moment to unconference her life, to look at, yeah, great, I can do all of this, but I am not showing up as my best self for the people I truly love and that depend on me to care for them. And I not only need to do something differently, I'm ready to share with the world how they too I can spare them that painful aha moment, perhaps, and get them to start embracing things so they never have to get there. And her experience, not only being a nurse, but then sharing in a very visual and emotional way, brought us all to the common denominator of being humans, which is how that set the tone and made everyone unguarded for the rest of it.
Yeah, and I got to say that when we ended with that song, that "Nice for a Living," that even hit me. I mean, I choked up on that because I can absolutely know that I've done that. You put your nice face on the day and you walk in that door and you're just not nice. I mean,
I think everybody related to this, and I know you're about to play it. Let's just make sure everybody knows Stephanie wrote this song and she played it for us live on stage.
For a living, or you might get fired. Every day they ask me to do more with less. I'm not sure I can handle all this stress, so I head home to my safe place where I see that same familiar face, and then I tear a strip up and down. I ain't got no patience for playing around, 'cause I'm nice for a living. I'm nice for a living. I'm nice for a living. I got nothing left for you. I go to work, I give 100% time.
That's.
We'll put this in our show notes.
Yeah,
by the way.
that's just
listen to the whole thing. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think it resonated with everybody there because this is an industry where people care about other people, right? And it's hard to sometimes to understand that split that occurs, right? That you sell everything, you give everything during the day, but you sometimes you walk in that door and you don't have what you need to have for the people that are the most important to you. And I think Stephanie really resonated with everybody when she said, you've got to make sure you work on yourself. And I think that stuck with a lot of people.
And that was the theme for much of the conference. We had 4 keynote speakers. Stephanie was our primary keynote speaker, and just about everything that any other keynote speaker brought forward, there was, or even in our sessions, because that's how we were partly an unconference. We made sure that our theme was carried forward through all of our sessions.
Right.
We're getting some great comments here. Carrie Alberts, such a special event. Ashley Bjorkman, everything about this conference was meaningful. It's just so great. Thank you all for posting these comments and for being part of it. So I just want to do that shout out for the people who are listening. So let's talk about some of the sessions, Cambria.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, Kathy, we did have 4 keynotes. We had obviously Stephanie Staples, and then we also had Dale Henry, who was remarkable in his own right. Absolutely, talk about a world-class storyteller who really helped us show up and walk away with 2 really actionable things. Never say not my job, and never say I have to. And if you can change your mindset on those 2 things, not 42, just those 2, how different the opportunities in your life can be and how much better a leader you can be. Followed, preceded by Charles Turner of Care with a K, digging into really having this balance between empathy and understanding and knowing your audience to also the data behind it. And the data don't lie, right? Is that if we really understand what we think our caregivers want in terms of flexibility and understanding who they are and where they come from, what we think makes them happier and will help us retain them and really maximize is, statistically, almost 100% wrong. And Charles shared this amazing data to help us become more informed about how we show up and can do better about how we're staffing our companies and how to leverage not only care, but just as industry information. And then, of course, we had Eric Rooney, who opened up the room to all different backgrounds about what are the people have options of how they want to die. And to show up in a room of over 300 people that come from all different religious, political backgrounds, and to be that courageous and say, I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just telling you what the options are. Take what you want. And for people to show up and say, and the walk away, he was a little nervous too, as all of us. Talk about being vulnerable. And the first question that he got is, hey, Eric, I've got a question for you. And the room was a little silent. How can we support you? How can we help further your work, your mission? And he was very choked up by that. So that was a big aha moment of a room full of people that I honestly thought maybe knew so much more than I did. It was just groundbreaking. And then follow that up for our breakout sessions, that we had a documentary that was shared by one of the researchers on the experience and of LGBTQ, and really taking us down this path of awakening awareness of what it's like to travel and age as a member of the LGBT community, and how can we do better? Are we doing better? And are you even aware of these things? And those, I love it. And I will not mention this person by name, but someone who is incredibly experienced in this. And yeah, I get that. I know that. This individual left that session in particular and said, that was a jaw-dropping moment for me. Thank you so much for having the courage to have that topic in one of your breakout sessions and letting me experience that. That out of everything else, if I only did that, it was worth it.
That's unbelievable. And just on that one real quick, sorry, Francis, on that one really quick, it's not just the aging process of people with LGBTQ, because there's a lot more now as the boomers are moving, at least more that are out, but there's also the people who are caring for these individuals, who this is the world that we live in, and the love and acceptance that happened in that room, and the tears and the breakthroughs and the things that were shared, absolutely unbelievably moving. And we keep using the word remarkable. And if you break down the word remarkable, it means to remark on something. It was so powerful that you actually remark on it later. Just powerful.
Well, don't forget too, we had some different sessions. We had, self-defense stuff for caregivers, right? We had that. Yep. We also, we had Carrie Alberts, who came in as Dementia Darling to talk about some Dementia 101 for caregivers, not just the industry, but families as well too.
And hers was so remarkable. And I absolutely am always starstruck by our Dementia Darling. And I'm not alone, because not only from her panel, but then also representing Eugenia in the village and getting to experience that really immersive products and service offerings. Like, she just did such an amazing job at pulling those topics together. How about Danny also with the storytelling? It continued of how we showed up in the village. How can we do that when we don't have our village together? How can we actually start leveraging the stories that we have to actually tell what we do in a way that's really differentiating and powerful? And you don't have to have big bucks to do that. And I thought Danny from Captive did an amazing job on that.
Well, then even, we started talking about different regulation changes. We had it from a whole collaborative, though, right? I think every one of our sessions, whether it was even a little bit dry where you're talking about respiratory protection or just regulation changes coming in Colorado, it was still, the audience was a give and take. It wasn't just the panelists or the presenter, speaking the whole time. It was a give and take between audience members. Hey, I've tried this before. What's your thought? And if we did it this way, or yeah, we're really struggling with this. What is your thoughts on how we can, not struggle so much? And to me, that was really powerful, where we had 50, 60 people in a lot of these sessions that were sharing ideas that were like, hey, we've done this before. This is the best practices we've used. And I think that's different. It's not just one person saying, hey, this is how you have to do it.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because we took a little risk. We took a lot of risks with this because we're an unconference, right? So as Cambria said in the beginning, most conferences are, you have all the chairs facing forward. It's set up sort of lecture style or theater style or classroom style. Those are the choices you're given. And we said, nope, not going to happen. We almost in every room had a circle. So it was like everyone was in a circle. We're all talking to each other. And it wasn't someone, I'm up here talking to you or at you. Right. It really was, we're in this together, and we feel that energy. So just the setup of the room.
And
we also had to
maximize also,
Go ahead. I think we have a lag.
Go ahead, Cambria.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the other part of it was exactly what you were saying. And in that same setting, taking the traditional topics that, a lot of Colorado admins needed to have their new hours. We wanted to make sure to actually allow their funds that they invested in the conference to also count for these mandatory credits that they needed, and also to get CEUs. So we weren't creative for creative's sake. It was also rooted in functionality and really important credits that everyone needed to pay for outside of it. And we combined that into one. But like you said, Kathy, and you really pushed us on this, because as we all know, we're in the final stages of conference planning. It's like, great, I don't have to think about that room. It's set up the way it always is. And you did the no. We're the unconference, and this doesn't feel that way. And so we were able to pull all those topics into one.
But I also want to go and say one thing that was pretty slick, though, is every one of our rooms had a theme, right? And I think that took a lot of energy. I mean, we had the 60s, 70s, 80s rooms. And, you had splatter paint, I think you did for the 80s, with some of the cool, slogans on it from the 80s with some Nintendo stuff, right? And we had...
He doesn't know the slogans, Cambria.
I can't remember. And then we had, the 70s room with the, 60s room with Elvis Presley, right? And, the bus and all that, the flowers and Power Flower and all that stuff, but also the design on the wall. We taped these cool things up. I mean, it wasn't just a one-dimensional room after the team got done designing it. It was 3D impact feel. I mean, it was pretty cool. I mean, in the 60s room done by, Jenny with her disco cutouts and the disco bulbs. I mean, that was pretty cool. I mean, there was a lot of cool impact touches that really brought the room into this more intimate feel, where you could, be a little more uncomfortable, but also vulnerable to see how you can improve.
It's all about taking ourselves a little less seriously, and how can you be uptight when you're in a splattered paint, like, oh my God, totally room.
Totally rad.
And also, this is all do-it-yourself, DIY, right? Again, we did not have funding or an investment to start this conference. So this required an entire village from many of our neighbors, our partners, our friends. And so, we had the Kala take over the 60s room. We had Copra take over the 70s room. And then myself in the 80s room. As you can tell, I'm kind of an 80s girl. And then we did have our more traditional room set up, because it doesn't work for everyone, and we didn't want to totally over pivot. So we had a little something for everyone. And the greatest thing is that I know Jenny Dill, who is with Copra and works with Cameron at Next Steps, is that they were also planning on taking some of the themes and the decorations back to the communities to actually set up and enjoy them for more, and actually have these parties and celebrations and use them back in the communities with their residents. So definitely we are extending our use and creativity, and we put our heart and soul into this, because that's what this industry does every single day. and they deserve it. And so did we.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
So let's kind of summarize. Can we summarize in, one word each what the conference meant to us? So is that possible?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Throw that one at us. Thanks, Francis.
Yeah.
Out of
That's why I
left
asked the
field.
question.
Yeah, I know. Empowering.
Transformational.
Great. Now I'm the last one. You guys took some good
I
ones.
see what we did.
Optimistic.
Oh, I like
I'll take
it.
all of those.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
We should
I
ask
love
that
it.
I'm going to make that on social media. That's a great thing to ask all of our attendees and sponsors, because
Just one word. One
One
word.
word.
yeah, one word. It's not what we say it is. It's what
Right.
they say it
Exactly.
is. So I would love to hear.
Yeah.
So what actions do we want people to take now that they've heard about this event? Some people listening were at the event and were able to participate. A lot of people weren't there, but having heard this, what actions do we want people to take? Right.
I think there's a couple. Go ahead, Cambria. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, first of all, if you were there, and everyone's so sick of me saying this, my housekeeping thing, make sure you do the survey, because that's an action that will just help us do better and grow and learn. So that's one, is give feedback. The second is, if you are a member of Kala or COPRA or a follower of Mavs, thank your leaders and thank your associations for believing in this and allowing people to have the time to really bring this to life. And renew your memberships and follow Mavericks. Next is, we are going to be building a resource center. So for all of, like the video Francis just shared, there's books. There were other authors at the conference. So we will be launching a resource page. And we also have some very actionable initiatives that are coming out of this. These big ideas are not left on the trade show floor. They are coming to life. So we've got some big news to start to share with the rest of the industry, how everyone can start being involved, and not just at an annual event, but more regularly. How can we start bringing this community together to focus on the human experience in aging and bridging those gaps and breaking down silos every single month, every quarter, and start having these big initiatives. And everyone listening to this will have a chance to opt in and start to join that movement. So stay tuned in the coming weeks and months on how to join that. And then lastly, from my perspective, and you all may have other actions, is, almost lastly, we also had Eric Rooney, and we all asked how we could help support him. Well, at our unconference, we had an artist. We had Sue come in as an artist to start visual note-taking, which is really illustrating on large poster boards the main takeaways of our 2 days together around bridging gaps, breaking down silos, and the human experience in aging. And we have a digitized copy of this, of which we will be offering to everyone, whether you've come to the conference or not, for an affordable fee. And Collaboration in Aging and all of our partners have agreed to donate 100% of those proceeds directly to Eric Rooney and his mission to continue helping people die with choice and die with dignity, and his mission. And so that will be an offering. And also to not leave your notes on the floor. We talked about how can we have better connections, be happier and healthier. And it's not about making a laundry list of 42 things that you're going to start to do every day. It's that 4%. What can you do just 4% better? And then obviously the words that Dale Henry left us with of never say it's not my job or I have to. And those were all very actionable things that we left and wrapped up at Collaboration in Aging Unconference 2023.
Well, great. You just took everything that I was going to say. So,
it's unusual when Francis has no words to say.
That was a fantastic. No, in all seriousness, that was a wonderful summary, I think. And I think you said it best. I mean, it was just, there was a lot of takeaway, but these are the big items. And I think, how we're going to put essentially our money where our mouth is by supporting Eric Rooney, I think is really important. So stay tuned for that. And also, I think we all realize that, there's these micro things that we have to do on a continuing basis, right? Not something that we can do just once every 18 months. And so I think that's going to be really impactful and powerful. And yeah, I just applaud the team's effort. We had a fantastic team that really, put a lot of, blood, sweat, and even a little tears into this at times. But
Sure
it was,
did.
it was
and
a
I would
ride.
say for everybody, stay tuned. So all the things Cambria said, plus stay tuned. We have some magic coming your way.
Absolutely. So until next time, thank you, Cambria, and thank you to the, Kala, to Copra, for their incredible dedication to, the success of this unconference that we had. And here's to you, the attendees and the sponsors who are ready for that next transition into focusing on that human component where sometimes can get lost in the aging experience. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next Friday. And hopefully everyone will have a fantastic week and stay positive, pay it forward. And remember, start leaning in the direction that you want to go and just get a little bit better, that 4%.